Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to East Central Missouri and the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast number 356. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the morning of Saturday, April the 6th, from the James Strong Studio in Western St. Charles County. Well, just getting back off of vacation. Spent a week, my yearly April trek to Death Valley, as I like to describe it, my time on the psychiatrist's couch. Relaxing, peaceful. I love the desert. If I get there once a year, it's not enough, but usually I just get there once a year. So I guess it is enough, isn't it? But it was a remarkable trip, different trip this time, really from any other year. And that's what the podcast is going to be about, my trip to the desert. And what I normally do, what I did not do this time, why I did not do it, and what I did instead. And sometimes change is good, because I learned a few things on this trip that, you know what? It's good to try new things, because worst case scenario, you don't like them and you go back to the old. But a best case scenario, you stumble upon something that may be better than the status quo. Before we get to the podcast, on my trip to the desert, and the James Strong mantra, you need to have the adventure of a lifetime 3 times a year. This was number 2. Number 1 was our trip to Puerto Rico in January. Number 2 was this trip, the desert trip. Number 3, don't have it planned yet. Probably going to be something in the autumn, October, but not sure yet. Just two out of 3 scratched off, and this is only the 4th month of the year, so I think that's I'm well on my way to reaching my goal, don't you think? Part of getting to the desert from the Midwest is it takes a while to get there, and for this trip we flew into Las Vegas, and direct flight from St. Louis. On the way home, we had a semi-direct flight. Had to stop in through Wichita. Same flight, didn't change planes, but the times were right. The price was right. So instead of flying direct, we went through Wichita. It just worked out better that way. Flight delays, mechanical problems with the plane, so we didn't get until late Friday night, last night. But that's okay. That's what's going to happen. People who claim about flight delays because of mechanical problems, think of the alternative. You know what? Let's just roll the dice and not fix the broken part on the plane and cross our fingers and hope that everything's going to be just fine. That's okay. Let's fix the plane and be a couple hours late. I'm okay with that. But before we get into the podcast, reading a book on the way there and back, because it takes a long time. And I'm not a big movie watcher, but I am a big book reader. So I'm reading a book called The Vagabonds, and it's about the adventures, the camping adventures of Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, and John Burroughs, the naturalist, and I forget the guy's first name, Firestone, the tire guy. Okay, these 4 guys went once a year or so on a camping trip, which is no big deal, except for you got to figure this was in the 20-teens into the 2020s, okay, in a car when there weren't really many cars around. The advantage was one of the 4 was Henry Ford, who made the most successful car in the history of automaking industry, the Model T. And But I've said this before, where I've said that Thomas Edison is the Elon Musk of our era. Maybe that's true, but he may be closer to the Henry Ford of our era. And the reason I say that is because Henry Ford, at that time, had the most successful car company at that time. As of right now, you could arguably say, in fact, no, I would say that Elon Musk has the most successful car company right now. When I say that, maybe not in terms of sales, but in terms of profit. And plus, he basically owns at least half the company, maybe more, and he runs the company by himself. What he says goes. General Motors, Stellantis, Ford, none of those companies are that way. None of them. They have, committees and everything's done by committee, okay? So it takes so long to do things. Elon Musk, like Henry Ford, while the two don't own the whole company, they ran it. What they said went. Henry Ford made the Model T. That was the only car that Ford made back in the teens and in the early 1920s. Ford didn't make another car. They made black Model Ts. That's all you got. And Tesla, basically they've got 4 cars, and 2 of the 4 are the only ones that sell, really, the Model Y and the Model 3. They make up like 80% of what they sell. Yeah, they still sell the Model S and the Model X, but they're high dollar, high end cars. They sell that Cybertruck, kind of, but I don't think they've sold enough of those to even make 1 or 2% of their total sales. And they plan on another car coming out the end of 2025. But basically, they don't have a lot of different cars, and they've really stayed about the same since they've been around. The Model S, which was the first production car they had, is exactly the same as it was when they brought it out, 12 years ago? Looks exactly the same. They don't change cars. They don't change models. This is what you get, okay? Which is kind of what Henry Ford did. How else are Ford and Musk similar? They both had, let's just call them interesting political and social views, okay? And those interesting political and social views have hurt their business. Elon Musk, he bought Twitter, changed the name to X, and has become very political, and he's been polarizing. You can say you agree with him, you can say you disagree with him, but when you're an industrialist who sells cars and then get off onto something else and you alienate a portion of the populace, you're going to lose sales. That has certainly happened with Musk. Henry Ford was a big-time anti-Semite. I mean, he didn't like Jews. In fact, he disliked Jews so much, he just thought they were a flawed people. He thought that they were greedy, they were selfish, they were the bankers and Hollywood was ran by the Jews, and he had a lot of Jews that were, I wouldn't say friends, because Henry Ford did not have a lot of friends, but acquaintances. And when they were upset with him, he was shocked. And he really believed that. He said, look, I'm just telling you how you people are. I figured that you would appreciate that so you could realize it and change. That's really what he believed. So Ford and Musk were a lot alike in many ways. Unbelievably smart, unbelievably successful in business, but they let their social thoughts get in the way sometimes, and it alienates a portion of their populace, and it hurts their business. Anyway, The Vagabonds, about Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Firestone, Burroughs. Good book. If you have a chance, give it a read. Okay, my podcast today, The Adventure of a Lifetime, 3 times a year. Adventure number 2 for the year 2024 was my trek to Death Valley. I do this most years, once a year, usually in April, sometimes in October. I did it a time or two in the summertime. It was just too hot. Oh, when the nighttime temperature, when the nighttime low is 98, okay, and the high is 118, and you're in a tent and there's no trees for shade, friends, that gets old real quick. So I don't do it in the summertime anymore. I think the only people who do it in the summertime are masochists and Europeans. That's about all you find in the desert, or at least in Death Valley in the summertime. But this was a unique trip. Normally I climb a mountain, Wild Rose Peak, Telescope Peak, one of those mountains. This time, no mountain. A couple of reasons. I also like to go on long hikes. This time there were no long hikes. Only one reason for no long hikes, but a couple of reasons for no mountains. First of all, I posted some pictures on Facebook of my adventure, and in the background you can see the Panamint Mountains, which are the mountains that I normally climb when I'm in the desert. They're full of snow. And last year there was just a little bit of snow. You could see a little bit of snow from camp. But when I got up there, there was a little bit more than a little bit, and I got off the beaten path and I got turned around. I got lost. And if it were not for my altimeter and compass, I still might be wandering about in the desert, but I found my way back to the road. It was fine. This time there's a ton of snow up there, and I was not going to go traipsing through 8 feet of snow to try to get to the peak of a mountain. Number two, it didn't matter because Hurricane Hillary came through Death Valley in August, and those roads still aren't open. So even if I wanted to try to fight the snow, I couldn't because the roads are closed. So the other reasons I couldn't go on a long hike or climb a mountain is I've had problems with my foot. And actually, I've had problems with my foot since last summer, off and on. And I finally went to a sports medicine doctor, figuring it was plantar fasciitis because I've had this before. I go to a doctor. He gives me a bunch of exercises. I do them. I'm fine. This time, I went to the sports medicine doctor. He gave me a bunch of exercises, a stupid brace to wear, even sent me to a therapist. And 4 weeks later, I was no better. In fact, I wasn't worse, but I wasn't better. There was no change. The only change there was before I had foot pain all the time. And I'm talking pain with every step. Every single step I take hurts. That gets old quick, folks. But this time it was like, you know what? Used to be 24/7 I had pain in the foot when I would try and walk. This time it was actually not too bad during the evening. During the morning when I first got up. But in the evening, it was bad. The longer the day went on, the worse the pain got. So the doctor looked at me after 4 weeks, started pressing here and there, and he says, "Look, your plantar tendon seems just fine." And then he touched my heel, and I went through the roof. I said, "This is where it hurts, that spot only." So they did an MRI, and I've got a torn tendon. Probably had it for a long time. So he wanted to put me in a cast to stabilize it for 4 weeks. I said, "You know what? We do that after the trip. I'm not going out to the desert with a cast." He said, "Fine, just don't push it. Just take it halfway easy." And I did. I mean, we did a lot of driving around by car and then walking on flat level ground at a nice slow pace. So I didn't push it. Notice I said we. I took the trophy wife with me. Yeah, she came camping with me, believe it or not. But there was something else different done with this trip. Normally, I pitch a tent. This time, we didn't do camping. We did more like, what do they call it? Glamping, okay? So we stayed at the same place, but where I normally stay, there's a section where they have what they call cabin tents. And basically what the owners have done recently is they realize that everybody that goes there doesn't have an RV or wants to lay on the ground. So they poured some concrete pads and put canvas tents up on them. And they got little cots for you to sleep on. We rented one of those for the week. And that's the only way the trophy wife was going to come. She wasn't going to sleep on the ground. What, in her words, not mine, we've achieved a level of financial success so we no longer have to live like the homeless, okay? So she won't camp, but she will glamp. And I'm not going to lie to you. I kind of liked it. And it's not that I don't mind sleeping on the ground, but here's what I really liked about it, okay? It takes about an hour to put up a tent. It takes about an hour to take down the tent. So there's 2 hours of your trip just putting up and taking down. Plus you got to pack it, which means if you pack the tent, you can't pack some other stuff. Because you don't have to bring a sleeping bag. You don't have to bring bedding. You don't have to bring all that stuff because they supply it for you, okay? And I kind of liked it. I mean, was the sleeping more comfortable? Sure. But it was just the convenience of doing things. If the wind gets bad, so what? You're in the tent. If it rains, so what? You're in a tent. I mean, it's really convenient. It's really nice. It costs a bit more, but not a ton more. And it was worth it. Long story short, the next time I go out there, I may not be bringing my tent. I just maybe stay in one of those cabin tents. And maybe it's my age. Maybe I've gotten older. Maybe I've gotten soft. Maybe I've just decided, you know what? If I don't spend 2 hours setting up, that's 2 hours I can spend doing something different. So plus, you don't get the strange looks from people when you ask them, "Hey, you want to come along with me?" "Really? How are you going to sleep?" "Well, we sleep in a tent on the ground." "No, thank you." More people are open to sleeping in a glamping tent than a camping tent. Okay. So I tried something different, and lo and behold, I liked it. I mentioned before our trip, St. Louis to Las Vegas, direct flight, and I normally bring along the Pelican cooler. What's a Pelican cooler? Think of a Yeti cooler with wheels, okay? So what I do is I take 2 bags, because you fly Southwest, you get two free bags. One of them is my my duffel bag with all my supplies in it, my camping supplies. The other one is the Pelican cooler with wheels, and that holds my clothes. I get to camp, take the clothes out, put them on a car seat, fill it up with ice and food. That's my food and supplies for the week. By the end of the week, food's gone, ice is melted, you dump it, you put the clothes back in, you take it home. So it's my cooler that doubles as my second suitcase. It really works out well. It's big, it's heavy, it's a hassle to haul along, but you know what? It works well if you need ice in the desert. The car we rented, actually rented a truck this time. A couple of reasons. Last few times I've gone out there with a car, I got flat tires. I thought, you know what? Let's try a truck this time because they have better tires. I'm less apt to get a flat going off-road. And lo and behold, when I went to rent a vehicle, the truck was the cheapest thing I could rent. So it's what I wanted anyway, and it was cheaper than everything else. Enterprise said, I'm getting a Chevy Colorado or similar. It was a Nissan Frontier. And I will tell you, I don't know. I guess it was fine. It had a V6 engine, plenty of power. It took us where we wanted to go, had good tires on it. So we went into places we probably shouldn't have gone without incident or hassle. But Nissans are just quirky to me, okay? I've owned Nissans before. I had a Nissan Sentra once upon a time, many years ago. But in renting them on my business trips and now renting this Nissan Frontier truck, they're goofy. They're quirky. The locks don't seem to work right. I mean, sometimes you hit the button, sometimes it unlocks it, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it unlocks it halfway. In other words, the door kind of halfway opens, but it grabs. You go to hit the unlock 18 different times, and it doesn't want to unlatch it. So what you have to do is lock it again, then unlock it, and then it works. Car shouldn't do that, okay? The screen, occasionally it just goes blank, and which is not a big deal because I don't use the screen for a whole lot, the navigation screen, except for if you want to back up. The backup camera doesn't work. And if you're in a tight position with rocks all around and you got to back up, you kind of need a backup camera. Well, sometimes it just goes off. It comes back on if you wait, but it just goes off for no reason. So I don't know what the deal is, but once upon a time, I think Nissans used to be dependable, reliable cars with no quirks. I think that ship has sailed. They're quirky and they're goofy, but I mean, that being said, it worked out just fine. We got about 24 miles to the gallon, which is not horrible for a truck, especially a V6. And again, plenty of power to go up hills, get in the gravel, never got stuck, never even came close to getting stuck. So for what we needed, it was just fine. But the whole truck seemed kind of cheap. Okay. Anyway, we got to where we needed to go, and we got there. Before we got there, though, we had to buy supplies. Of course, we had to eat breakfast. We always eat breakfast at the Pepper Mill. The Pepper Mill is an iconic breakfast restaurant in Las Vegas, next to the new Fontainebleau, where the Riviera used to be. If you know old Las Vegas, it's next to where the Riviera used to be. The new Las Vegas, it's 2 blocks west of the Westgate, the old Las Vegas Hilton, and just down from the Fontainebleau, just up a little bit from Steve Wynn's Encore Hotel, okay, on the east side of the Strip. Peppermill breakfast has always been outstanding. I mean, they've had it in movies. It was in Goodfellas, the Cotton Club, many other movies you've seen. You've seen the Peppermill restaurant in film. But they always have a big breakfast, which is, you have your big breakfast, then you go out to the desert. For the two of us, in fact, the trophy wife and I got the same thing. Bacon, eggs, sausage, pancakes, coffee. And it was really more than we could eat, to be quite honest. Good food, lots of it, plenty of it, good service. But friends, I'm going to tell you again what we had. We had eggs, bacon, sausage, and pancakes and coffee. Okay, we each had the same thing. I think she got a Coke instead of a coffee. I forget. With tip, that bill was over $80. Now, I know we have inflation, okay? I know things have gone up, but it was close to, I want to say $87 was the meal. That was with taxes and tip. And it seems a lot for breakfast for two people, doesn't it? It did for me, but that's kind of what things cost. I mean, just not in Las Vegas, kind of everywhere. Stuff just costs more. After breakfast, we stopped at Walmart to pick up supplies. And Las Vegas, like many places out west, lots and lots and lots and lots of homeless. Okay, a whole lot of homeless. Which you think, well, how does that affect you, Strong? You're not doing anything with them. Well, it does affect me, because when we went to buy propane, you go to the camping supplies section of Walmart, everything's under lock and key because of the homeless. They'll steal the tents, they'll steal the propane, they'll steal all that stuff, so they have to put it under lock and key, which meant we had to find somebody who was authorized to open up the canister, the cabinet, so I could buy my $5 jug of propane to make my meals. And that took about 20 minutes. But that's just kind of what you get, okay? We live in interesting times, okay? After we got our supplies, loaded everything up with ice and food and beer and everything else, we headed on out to the Panamint Springs Resort in Panamint Springs, California. Stopped at the town of Armagoso to top off the tank. Always do that because gasoline in the desert is expensive. Anywhere from, I think the cheapest we saw it was $5.60. Some places was $7 a gallon for gasoline. But that's, you're out in the middle of nowhere. That's just what it costs. So we topped it up in Armagoso. Armagoso is in Nye County, which means it's called the alien truck stop or something like that. Okay, where you can buy alien stuff, gasoline. There's a Greasy Spoon restaurant. Oh yeah, and because it's in Nye County, there's let's just call it a house of ill repute, because prostitution is legal in Nye County. They used to have a hotel. Now they just don't call it a hotel anymore. They just call it what it is. It's a brothel, and they call it a brothel. So here's these rooms, but we know you're not spending the night. You're spending an hour, so we're not going to make the room so fancy, or so I've heard. After we got gasoline in Armagoso, we continued on. In fact, you go past the Creech Air Force Base, which the Creech Air Force Base is where a bunch of the drones that we have in this country are. We didn't see any drones this time. In fact, this is the first time I've ever gone through there where we haven't seen drones. But if you're going from Las Vegas to Death Valley on US 95, you go right past Creech Air Force Base. And while we didn't see them this time, chances are you're going to see drones, big ones, little ones. I mean, monster. Some of these drones are the size of a passenger plane. They're huge drones. How can you tell it's a drone? Well, there's no windows in them, not even in the front for the pilot to look out. So it has to be a drone now, doesn't it? But we got to camp by about 6 o'clock, set up the glamping tent, had happy hour and dinner. It was just wonderful. The wind kicked up a little bit, but not much. It got chilly. But, I mean, our dinner first night was chili dogs, actually. Nathan's Frank's, Wolf Chili, beer and chips. That was dinner. It was wonderful, cooked by the campfire. Sun went down, did dishes, sun went down, and there was no moon. The moon is kind of a morning moon, which means there's no evening moon, which means and no clouds. So that meant the stars were unbelievably bright. No moon, no clouds. The skies were amazing. Camp was a little bit loud, but not in a bad way. The reason I say that, there were a group of young people. They look about high school age, about 40 of them maybe. And they were just on a 3-week camping trip. I know this because the trophy wife was in the bathroom, heard some of the girls talking. And they had been out in the elements for quite some time. I mean, most of them had the girls had their hair cut very short, or kind of like in a ponytail, or on top of their head, and they were burnt and they were dark and they looked like they had been out in the weather for a long time. In fact, I will tell you, there were about 40 of them, and as I walked past their camp on the trail there, I could smell the BO 20 feet away. So, but they were having a great time. So they were, when I say they were loud, I meant they were just loud with the laughing and the talking, not in a bad way. In fact, in a good way. It made me smile to think, here's these people these young people in the prime of their life, or maybe not even yet in the prime of their life, just having the time of their life in nature with their friends, enjoying themselves. So was it loud? Yes. Was it loud in a good way? Absolutely. Yes. And, by the way, the first night was cold. It got down into the 40s. I mean, to the point where I woke up about 11 o'clock at night with my teeth chattering, and I had trouble getting warm. I got up, I threw on my hooded sweatshirt, put that up, doubled my blankets over, huddled up in a ball, and was not freezing for the rest of the night, but cold. In the morning, got an extra blanket, and Monday night was the coldest night. Every other night was a little bit warmer. Still cold. Still cool, but not cold, probably in the upper 40s instead of the lower 40s like the first night. But after the extra blanket and just threw few extra clothes on, slept fine. Tuesday morning breakfast, and I posted this picture on Facebook. There's nothing more relaxing to me getting up at dawn, or just a little before dawn, actually, a little before 6, putting the coffee pot on, and just sitting there listening to the whiz of the propane humming along, the coffee percolating, and looking at the sun coming up over the Panamint Mountains. It's just a little slice of heaven for me. And actually, breakfast for us, it was the same every morning. Coffee, watching the sun come up, having coffee, and after we have coffee, oatmeal with raisins and yogurt, and orange, and a banana, and a glass of V8 juice. Just same breakfast every time. Something simple to eat, easy to clean up, simple to cook, simple to eat, easy to clean up. Just a basic breakfast that works out well. After I cleaned up the mess, I packed up some sandwiches for our adventure for the day. And the first day, we went right down into the Panamint Valley. Now, I posted these pictures on my Facebook page too. If you have a chance, take a look at them. And when it rains in the desert, as it has for the past several months. In fact, they had a pretty big rainstorm just Saturday. Okay. Flowers bloom abundant. In fact, the whole Panamint Valley was just awash, and it looked like a blanket of gold. In fact, that's what these flowers are called. They're called desert gold, and they're just amazingly beautiful. And the whole desert smelled like a florist shop. There were so many flowers, it smelled like a florist's shop. It was just so beautiful. The other thing that happens in the desert when it rains is the dry lake beds are no longer dry lake beds. For the first time ever, I saw water in the Panamint Valley. I've never seen water in the Panamint Valley, ever. I've seen water in bad water before, at a distance, a little bit of water way far away. And had I not known it was there, because the ranger said, hey, there's water out there. Yeah, if you look hard, yeah, you can kind of see some water. The Devil's Golf Course, full of water. The Badwater Basin, so much water in it. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, they closed it to kayaking. So a couple of weeks ago, you could go kayaking in Badwater Basin. They call it Lake Manly because it's a dry lake bed, but most of the time it's dry. Not this time. I actually waded out in the water. I walked out onto the salt flats and took my shoes off and waded out barefoot. And actually, it felt good. Now, I don't know if that's because the salts have a medicinal quality to them, but just wading in that nice warm water with the salt on my feet, it felt fantastic. Maybe it's just because there are a lot of people out there doing the same thing, and it's kind of a once in a lifetime thing, because you're not going to see that much water in bad water probably not going to see that much water in Badwater Basin for a long, long time, if ever in my life. But it was quite remarkable. Just the water that was out there that you could enjoy, and just enjoy yourself in the water. On the way back to camp, we stopped at the Borax Works, and borax. You know what borax is? It's a salt. It's a chemical. It's used in laundry detergent and other things. And they get it from the desert. They get it from Death Valley. In fact, the biggest borax mines in the world were in Death Valley, still are. They still mine it out there, okay? And basically they scrape it off the ground, refine it, and send it back. And these the borax works in Death Valley were actually ran in the early 1900s by Chinese workers, and they would take the refined borax and take it to the town of Mojave on 20 mule on teams that were driven by 20 mules. In fact, the whole 20 mule team borax, that's where it came from. That was the best way to get it across the desert. 20 mules hauled a few freight cars and one big water car. You had to have water in the desert. 120 miles or so from Death Valley to the town of Mojave, where it was put on a train, taken to Los Angeles, and sold. But went back to camp, had happy hour, had dinner, had some beef stew that we made up at dinner time, and again, watched the stars, went to bed. And woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of a burro doing his whinny in the distance, not like last year right next to my tent, but you can hear the burros doing their hee-haw, hee-haw, hee-haw in the middle of the night. Wednesday, you got up, coffee, breakfast at dawn, same breakfast we always have. Part of what we had, too, was visiting with campers. And in the morning, drinking coffee, I love talking to the different people in camp. And there were a couple of ladies from New York who were there. We talked with them. There were some guys who came in on motorcycles. They were taking their days. It was older guys. I think one or two of them brought their boys along. It just, the age differences looked like dads and sons. And they had wonderful, fantastic bikes. And they just took them on adventures all day long. Talked to them. Some of these guys, I mean, their bikes are beautiful. But, you know, this is an expensive hobby if you want to do it this way. I mean, the motorcycles are expensive. To have a dirt bike that's going to be reliable in the desert, you're going to pay a bit of money for that. And then there's the $100,000 RV that you haul them around in. And then they had all their trailers and their cook stoves and their everything. It's a hobby, okay? It's a lifestyle. It's something these guys love to do, and they're fun to talk to because they go places that you can't get to by car. Talked to another family from Transylvania, Romania. Actually, they had lived for the past 10 years in the UK. I asked him what town. He said Cambridge. I said, so you're an academic? He said, yeah, pretty much. Had a nice conversation with them. There was a couple from Oakland we talked to, camped next to us one night. You just talk about stuff with people that you've never seen and will never see again. But just the conversation by camp over coffee is just, that's a big hunk of the fun. Wednesday, we did things just a little differently. Remember, I told you that not much hiking, definitely no mountain climbing because of my foot and the condition of the roads. And the trophy wife came along, so we did something that I'd always wanted to do but never did do. Went into the town of Lone Pine, and they've got a motion picture museum there. If you didn't know it, the Alabama Hills in the town of Lone Pine, that's right on Highway 395, California 395. Lots of movies were made there, tons and tons of silent films because it's not too far from Los Angeles, okay? But the Hopalong Cassidy films, the film Gunga Din with Cary Grant was filmed there. Science fiction film Tremors, footage from Star Wars, Django Unchained, Iron Man. Lots of other films were filmed either entirely or in part in the Alabama Hills. And this museum kind of tells you what's what's there, what they did, who was in it, why the people liked it. Very cool. It was lots of a good hunk of history, and I'm glad I did it. It's one of those things that if you're with somebody who would enjoy it, you'd enjoy it. If you're by yourself, yeah, normally I'd rather be doing something else, but I wasn't, so I didn't, and I'm glad I went. On the way back to camp, we stopped at the Cerro Gordo mine, which at one time was the largest mine in the world, the most prolific mine in the world. And it's right there outside of the town of Lone Pine. In fact, outside the town of Keeler. You've never heard of Keeler. Of course you haven't. If you're 100 years old, maybe, but Keeler was a big deal once upon a time because the Cerro Gordo mine was up on a hill. And because it's in the middle of nowhere, it's hard to get the ore to someplace other than, someplace where you can actually process it. So what they did is they mined this up on the Cerro Gordo Mountains, brought it down the hill to the town of Keeler, then put it aboard barges, sailed it across Owens Lake to the town of Lone Pine, or just south of Lone Pine, and put it on a train. And then they were able to take the ore by train to Los Angeles and refine it. Well, Owens Lake isn't really there anymore because L.A. County decided they wanted the water. And a guy named Mulholland, Mulholland Drive, Mulholland, he basically took the water from Owens Lake, put it in the aqueduct, and brought it down to L.A., and Owens Lake went away. Well, because Owens Lake went away, they couldn't take the ore across the lake anymore because there was no lake. And so they had no economic way to get the ore from the mine to the refining areas. So they shut down the mine. The largest mine in the world was shut down. But lots of history there. And Keeler, because they no longer had the barges to take the ore across the lake, Keeler basically shut down. It was a booming metropolis once upon a time. Now the population is 50. Town of Darwin's the same way. A big gold mine then and now, by the way. They still mine gold in the area because gold has gone up to about, as of today, it's about $2,300 an ounce. So gold mining has become profitable again because they can make money at it because of the price. Darwin was a town, big booming town. In fact, the old cabins where the miners used to stay are still there. There's a gold mine there now, but they've got modern trailers where the guys live in now, and they're kind of self-sufficient away from the town itself. Then we went back to camp, had a happy hour, and actually we had dinner at the Panamint Springs Resort on Wednesday night. So no cooking. We had a proper dinner at a proper restaurant on Wednesday. Thursday got up. Coffee, breakfast, broke camp, went to Las Vegas, stopped by the Rhyolite Ghost Town, which ghost towns back then they went from boom to bust quickly. Rhyolite, they found gold in 1904 in the town of Rhyolite, okay? By 1905, it was a big deal. By 1908, there were 8,000 people that lived in the town of Rhyolite. 8,000. They had... just tons of people there. They had 3 railroads that went through the town of Rhyolite. 3. They had schools, 3 banks, stores, you name it, they had it. It was a real city, okay? The first U.S. senator from the state of Nevada was retired. He lived in the town of Rhyolite because it was a big deal. In that area, it was by far the biggest town in 1908. Second part of 1908, the gold started to peter out just a little bit. Not go away, but just decline. By 1910, a mass exodus began. By 1919, the post office closed. And by 1920, there were 14 people who lived in the town of Rhyolite. So from 1908 to 1920, a span of just 12 years, they went from 8,000 people to 14. That's it. And the town it's a ghost town. And it's actually a National Historic Center now, so you can't vandalize the buildings. But most of the buildings were rated to build a new town in the town of Beatty, which was just a little closer to the new gold mine, a little closer to what then became a highway to Las Vegas and to different areas. And they basically dismantled the buildings and put them up in Beatty. Gold is still mined today around Beatty, but Beatty is where the people live. It's a real town, bigger than Rhyolite ever was. And we spent a lot of time at the ghost town, just looking around, reading the history, and enjoying ourselves. And then back to Las Vegas, got in the car, got to the Hampton Inn, had a proper shower, nice dinner at Lowry's, and then came home on Friday. It was a good trip. So again, I talk about these trips. I will tell you that I'll say the podcasts that are the most listened to are the ones that have to do with my travels, with the chronicle my trips. It seems like either that or UFOs are the ones that people like to hear about the most. So anytime I have an adventure, I enjoy discussing it with you, my dear listeners. If you're interested, if you've ever thought, I'd kind of like to do this kind of stuff, consider the Panamint Springs Resort. In fact, just Google Panamint Springs Resort, and they'll talk about what it is. This is not a dude ranch. This is not the Taj Mahal. It is very basic. It is very rustic. It is very rural. There is no cell service out there, okay? You have water, but they go ahead and they bring the water in. They pump it in from Darwin Falls, okay? Have their own water treatment plant, and then they say it's drinkable. I still bring bottled water just in case. But you stay in these glamping tents. They're quite comfortable. $65 a night, so it's not going to break the bank. There's a shower across the walk. You could take a shower, so you can stay clean. $65 a night. A comfortable cot, kind of a futon. It's a cot with a little mattress, okay? They give you a pillow. They give you blankets. If you're cold, they give you extra blankets. Trust me, I got cold, I got extra. But you can rough it as much as you want or not. You can bring no supplies if you want, because the restaurant is open from 7 to 10 at night. So if you don't want to bring any food, just go there and get your coffee. Go there and get your food. Go there and get your beer. Do whatever you want. You can just drive there, try it a night. And you'll see what the desert's all about. You don't spend a whole lot of money. It's right off of California Highway 190, so it's not like you have to get off the beaten path. You can rent the most inexpensive car that they have at the rental car place and get there without fear of popping a tire. But it's an adventure that if you ever wondered what Death Valley's like, but you didn't want to spend the money or you didn't want to rough it, that's a good compromise. It's not Furnace Creek, where you'll spend $300 a night in an exclusive hotel, but you're not sleeping on the ground either. It's a good compromise. $65 a night for a cabin tent. Sleeps 2 very comfortably. They say 3, but 3 would be pushing it. So anyway, if you want an adventure, something that's a little different, check it out. The Panamint Springs Resort. That's it. I'm done. Until next time, this is James Strong saying adios.